Hello, Kay with Zuna. Uh, Gaps, normal gaps, which are defined as the difference between where price closed yesterday and the open today. That would be a normal gap, or called or referred to as a gap. This indicator will show the gaps. It just plots a trend line from yesterday's close to today's open and showing you the gap. A lot of people pay attention to gaps, and so if gaps are important to you and you would like to have a visual indicator showing you where the gaps are, especially not just for today but prior day gaps. For example, there's a large gap here, and if price was near that and you wanted to be aware of where that is, it's an open gap, it hasn't been closed, you can just extend the lines. So as you're trading, if price gets to that area, you can be aware of it. And you can plot this on any time interval from 1 minute all the way to 240 minutes or anything that you like. Let's quickly look at there's a lot of inputs here. You can have a marker show you the close and the open. This is good if you're using regular session charts, in other words a Globex session, and you want to be able to see what the pit session open and closes. So I have these turned to false since I'm looking at a pit session chart only right now. But if you wanted to use it on a regular session chart and still be able to tell where the gaps are, you can. You would just turn this to true, and it would also put a little marker, like a little dot on the open and on the closing bar. I live on the East Coast, so I have the time zones here as 16:15, which is 4:15, and 9:31, because this is a 1 minute interval. If this were a 15-minute chart, then this opening time should be 9:45 if you live on the East Coast. If you live on the West Coast or any other time zone, then just change this to correspond to your time zone. This is just the vertical offset for if you had these two inputs turned on. Show the gap true or false. Remove the gap true or false once it's filled. So you can put true if the gaps are filled and you're not interested in them any longer. Just put this true and it would remove it. And then you can choose the size, the type of trend line to plot, and also the size of the trend line. I have it on 0, but you could increase it 1, 2, 3, and it would just plot thicker trend lines. And then the styles of the trend line and the colors. And you would just put it the same as underlying data, the scaling. And if you have several, for example, let's say you have ES and you're looking at SPY also, you could apply it to both on the same chart. Okay. As you can see, this gap is not filled yet. There are two smaller gaps here and here and here and here that have been filled. If you don't want to see those trend lines any longer, then what you would do is change that to true, and it would remove them for you. It's a simple indicator, and gaps, like as I said earlier, are very important to many people. For example, these gaps have been filled, so the trend line, since we put it to true, has been removed. Let's put it back to false. A lot of people use gaps as areas of interest or areas where they want to initiate trades. For example, we were rising up the prior day and we had this large gap and the market sold off. We came up to it, and the next day at the opening came right up to the gap and then fell back again. So the degrees of gaps that occur and by session close we don't fill those gaps, they become pretty strong areas of support and resistance. And also when gaps are filled, for example, if we had filled this, you would want to look at this area. Once we fill it, you would want to start paying attention for reversals, because the market could either just go through it or reverse. So this is I guess some are asking, well, why would I need to see the gap? I can just see it on the chart. That is true, but when you have gaps, and right now we're currently here, and you want to be able to see what prior gaps, instead of scrolling all the way back, or you can just extend these lines prior to the market open. So if price is near there and you don't want to continue scrolling back, you're aware of them. Simple little indicator, and it's also great for people who use, for example, if you use, as I said, if you use the Globex charts or 24-hour charts, then you can still keep track of the gap. And I know several traders who have strategies just specifically on the gap, and I'm not referring to, okay, let's shoot for the gap fill, but instead they use the gap as areas where they like to take their trades. And they have a lot of filters. They're very successful with them. So anyhow, let me show you, for example, on a 15-minute chart. Now, as you can see, it's not plotting the gaps, but that's because we need to change. On a 15-minute chart, we need to change the opening time. Since the first interval on TradeStation closes at 9:45, we enter that as the opening time. So now you have your gaps. And if you wanted to look at, let's say, a 60-minute chart, you would change it to 10:30 since the first interval is 60 minutes. So it would plot the difference between yesterday's close and today's open, and that would be your gap. And you could take a look at what existing gaps are not filled. For me, I'm interested in gaps that are not filled as opposed to gaps that are. So this would be something of interest. And obviously, as you can see, it's also at this congestion area or swing point. This area here. So if you're looking, you could see that intraday this area produced, and it coincides with this swing point as well. Swing points that have gaps are generally a lot stronger compared to swing points that do not have gaps. So we will definitely monitor this area. If we come back down to this area, this is going to be an important gap, the gap from today, not the day before, but the day prior to that. Okay, and that's the gap indicator. If you guys have any questions, you can reach me via email. Thanks for watching.